Namaskar and welcome to this exciting new episode of Sattology Debunking Mythology. Today we have a very special guest, archaeologist, and one of the people who play with the facts, like archaeological facts, and who whose determination on dating has credibility in the entire world. And Dr. B.R. Money is a archaeologist, and he has been one of the chief archaeologists of India in the Archaeological Society or Archaeological Survey of India. Predominantly, his biggest notable work was Ayodhya excavation, and before that, also he has participated in many other temple restoration and moving of ancient heritage sites of India. So, without delay, let us welcome Dr. B.R. Money.
Thank you very much.
Dr. Mani, like when we talk about archaeology and dating, what do you think is the technology on dating is up to date, or how accurate is that? Before we start off the topic there.
Yeah, in fact, earlier it was relative dating, which was done in India till say 1950s. But after that, the new scientific approach was followed by the Indian archaeologists also, and new techniques of dating were introduced, including radiocarbon dating and other methods of dating, which in course of time has been modified and more accuracy has come now when we speak of AMS dating, which is also sort of radiocarbon dating. It's an improved version in which you require very little amount of sample for dating. Earlier, some more amount was required, but now so gradually the things have improved and new techniques have been adopted throughout the world and also in Indian archaeology.
So, in today's dating sample, even if you need less amount of carbon footprint there, how far back we can predict accurately?
It's the half life of carbon 14 is considered to be around 5,700 years and 5,730 years or so, uh, in which the amount of carbon 14 deteriorates and becomes half. So accordingly, the uh, as far as we go back in the course of time, so more accuracy comes, and we can date things for many thousand years very easily.
So the full carbon dating can go up to 10,400 years or 11,400
Yeah, yeah,
years?
yeah, more than that,
More than that.
more than
Okay.
that. Yes.
So coming back to Ayodhya, which is a very hot topic since last year, uh, globally Hindus are happy, and not just Hindus, even Americans are happy. Many Americans are happy, especially those who are connected with academics and people who are genuinely interested in working on ancient history. So India has the rich distinction of having the oldest living city on the planet today, Varanasi, and which is and you can correct me there because you are the expert there. But
I can also say that earlier the city of Varanasi was also considered to be around 800 BC. But now I also excavated the main site of the city of Varanasi, that is known as Rajghat, and from there we found the remains through scientific dating going back to 1600 BC. So from 1600 BC, continuously the site has been occupied, and it has been enlarged three times, and accordingly, the cultural, religious, educational, artistic developments had taken place, and there is no gap in between.
That's a great information, because most of the Western academics, they think that the whole world started in around 4000 BC. And I do you think the 1600 BC date of Varanasi is the oldest date, or before that also there was any city over there?
In Varanasi, we have not found any evidence of the city going back uh, to more than 1600 years before, 1600 years before Christ, or before the Common Era. But around Varanasi, there are sites which go back to 1800 BC, 1900 BC, and others. So, uh, in Varanasi, we don't have the earliest records of the city, but in other parts, like in the Harappan age, in the Harappan sites, we have evidence of the urban development taking place around 4000 BC or so.
So when we so you have done Varanasi, you have done Ayodhya. Obviously, I'm going to come back to Ayodhya, and other sites also you have done, many other sites. Can you name
Yeah.
some of them, and then gradually I'm going to call for each one of them. That's why I'm asking this question.
The earliest site, one of the earliest sites which I have excavated is Kunal in Haryana, and I excavated it for 3 years, from 2016 onwards till 2019, and the earliest date of Kunal, which is a pre-Harappan site, it goes back to 5700 BC. And then we have about 15 radiocarbon dates, which range between 4000 to 2500 BC. So that was the peak time when the city or the settlement was flourishing. But the earliest goes back to 5700 BC. Then I have also excavated a site in Kashmir, which uh, uh, which is a Neolithic site with its connection with early Harappans in around 3400 or 3300 BC. And interestingly, that site is also representing the site which is mentioned in Kalhana's Rajtarangini, which is a 12th century Sanskrit work on the history of Kashmir. And that mentions that the king, there were three Turush kings. So Turush here it means Kushan kings, and the book also names them Kanishk, Huishk, and Vasishk. So these three rulers had established cities on their own names. So we have found two of such cities, uh, Pushkura representing Huishpur, and Kanishpur, still it is called Kanishpur, which I was fortunate enough to excavate in 1999. And I got remains of both Neolithic period going back to about 3400, 3300 BC. And then there is a gap. And then we have found the remains of the Kushan times. So that is one of important sites. Besides that, I've been excavating a number of other places. Like in Delhi, I have excavated Lal Kot, where we have the evidence of establishment of the city of Delhi going back to 10th, 11th century AD. And the Rajput phase was not clear earlier, which we found that the site is represented by two cultural periods, Rajput period and early Sultanate period. So that is also one of the important sites which I excavated for 4 years. And then there is a list of 1920 sites which I have excavated.
No, I'm going to, since you gave me a list, now I'm going to trouble you for all those videos separately. So, so that was the whole purpose of asking last question. Now,
Okay.
so coming back to the period of, like, for example, in the case of, I'm a researcher on Mahabharata and Ramayana, and I my sixth book came out, which was Yudhishthir, the greatest samrat ever, in which I presented Yudhishthir in a proper light. And in the same book, I have written that Mahabharata was first spoken in Takshashila by Vaishampayan to Janmajaya. And after Mahabharata was compiled and Mahabharata war was over, Parikshit had already left and his son was ruling. And Janmajaya was installed as a king of Hastinapur by Maharaj Yudhishthir. So, provided India takes control of Takshashila sometime politically, but do you think that excavation can result in dating of Takshashila sites, or to some antiquity where the faith of billions of Hindus is dependent on that also? Like, they want to see that their heritage sites are protected, and or excavation is done so that they come out.
Regarding Takshila, I must mention that it was one of the capitals of Gandhar Mahajanpad. Mahajanpad it became later, but it was the principality of Gandhar, which, uh, as the tradition goes, it had two capitals, Takshashila and Pushkalavati. So Pushkalavati is represented today by Charsadda, and Takshashila is represented by present day Taxila, which was Taxila was excavated from 1913 to 1932 or 33 by Sir John Marshall, who was Director General of Archaeological Survey of India, and that there are three basic city sites in Taxila. So the earliest one, what the excavations have revealed, is the Bhir Mound at Taxila. And at that time, there was no scientific dating method. So on the basis of indirect evidences and relative dating, it was assigned to a date of about 6th century BC onwards. But later on, the archaeologists of Pakistan had excavated a site called Sarai Khola, which also comes in the same orbit, in the periphery of Taxila, and that goes to second millennium BC. So that may probably represent the earliest phase of Taxila, and which definitely will be contemporary to Mahabharata times, if not earlier. So those researches still require a proper investigative research.
No, great point. I think you gave me some pointers to research myself now on this. So we want to get American archaeologists involved also in some of these sites as well. So coming to the point of Ayodhya, because you are the principal, you are the principal, you know, what do you call it, dating for Ayodhya when you say. So, what are the artifacts in Ayodhya which point to the old palace of Ramkot? Ramkot is the name which is mentioned in many places. So, what are the things that you found which you said that it was the original Ramkot or the palace of Ram?
We can't directly associate the huge structure which we have exposed in our excavations of 2003 at Ayodhya to Lord Ram. But yes, it was found just below the site where the Babri Masjid existed, and mm, it's a very huge structure. Its north-south length is about 60 meters, and some parts are under have been excavated earlier because the mosque was only 27 meters in length. So beyond the mosque on both the sides, it extends the length of the earlier structure. So it's a massive structure which we have called, and it cannot be an ordinary house. And considering that this was a massive structure in the uh, 10th, 11th century or up till 12th century, mm, at that time we cannot imagine it to be associated with a palace where Lord Ram was born. But we can say that the temple of Ram might have been constructed over there because we have found remains of uh, two definite temples below the site of the mosque. And the third one is a reconstruction mm, or rather repairs to one of the two temples. So either you can say there are three temples or two temples with a reconstructed one. So that also we don't have any um, fact to associate directly with Ram, but there are indications because of the construction pattern and also because of the findings from that level below the mosque that it was a temple site, and it was a very huge temple. Now we also have the inscriptional evidence, which when the mosque was being demolished in 1992, 6th December 1992, it was demolished. So at that time, a huge inscription was found, 20-line inscription, which mentions a massive temple which was constructed in the time of Emperor Govind Chandra, who belonged to the dynasty of the Gahadwal rulers, and who constructed this temple at Ayodhya. By his orders, the temple was constructed by his local officers and the feudatory rulers at Ayodhya. And there also he mentions about Janmasthan. So probably this temple of what we say Ram Janmabhoomi, it had the name of Lord Ram associated with this, and it was called Vishnu Hari Temple. So in the inscription also it mentions Vishnu Hari Temple, and Ram was one of the incarnations of Vishnu. So it was a huge temple, might have been constructed at the same spot where Lord Ram was born, and in memory of that, and also giving place to other incarnations of Lord Vishnu. So it was called Vishnu Hari. So these are the things which through which you can associate this massive structure with the construction activity of the Nagar style or North Indian style of temples, and which was connected with Lord Ram. And so far as the palace of Ram or palace of the Ikshwaku rulers is concerned, uh, it's very difficult because the depth of the mm, uh, settlement just over the natural soil, the depth is around 40 to 45 meters. Uh, mm, no, 40 to 45 feet. So, at that depth, if the entire upper structures and all the things are removed, only then we may be able to find what is the structure at that level. But the charcoal samples which were collected from that depth, that has proved that this site also goes back to about 1680 BC.
So, Ayodhya, according to Ramayana, is around 12 yojana long and 3 yojana wide. And this is the information given by Love and Kush and also Valmiki also. So, and Bhagwan Ram approved it at that time. In the Ramayana, it is mentioned actually there. So it's a huge site, huge site. It's not. It's like 96 miles by 24 miles. It's almost
Yes.
like San Diego border to Irvine. It almost
Mm.
takes by when you drive at almost 70 miles an hour speed, it takes you 1 hour 15 minutes to cover this distance. So it's a huge area for excavation. And when I visited Ayodhya last year on Dr. Swami's birthday, uh, there Hanuman Gadi, somebody told me, was the oldest site of Ayodhya today. Is that a right thing?
No, in fact, two teams have done work at Hanuman Gadi in 1960s. It was touched by Banaras Hindu University's team of archaeologists, and then later on by a team of Archaeological Survey of India in from 1972 to 1983. In between that period, there was a Ramayana national project in which they were searching for evidences at the sites which are associated with the history of Lord Ram. So those sites were excavated at that time. So those evidences also, because you might have noticed that Hanmangadi is not in a very huge. It's of course a very tall mound, but in circumference it is very less. So there is no place left for excavation. So unless the structures are removed, only then you can take up the excavations at the middle of the mound. But in the periphery, whatever have been done earlier, that has not gone back to beyond 6th century or 7th century BC. But for the first time, the Ram Janmabhoomi site in the Ramkot area that has given the evidence of 1600 plus BC, and there are so many other charcoal samples which have given different dates: 1200, 1300, 900 BC, and all. So that shows that the site was never abandoned and it was continuing. and it continued like Varanasi. It also continued till the time of the late Mughals.
So in Saryu River mentioned is mentioned in Ramayana Kala also, very old river it is, and Ayodhya
Yeah,
is on the east of Saryu, right? And on the west side is Valmiki Ashram, and still those places are there. Maybe it is symbolic, but maybe it was much further away. There are many different there. But if you look at the topography from the high resolution satellite images I've got, and also I traveled there. If you look at the entire area of Ayodhya as mentioned in Ramayana, there are thousands of mounds, and they are not mountains. Like a mountain formation is different because before
yes,
any mountain there is a valley,
yeah.
and then you go into the valley, and then suddenly you see the mountain, high mountain. But these are like a plain land and then suddenly a mound. Was there any plan ever in the past to excavate all those mounds also? Because there is a mention of high rise buildings, white color, all those descriptions are very
Exactly.
vividly mentioned. Like if you read, anyone read Valmiki Ramayana, the entire picture comes to the mind, that these are the different palaces and the descriptions. Has any pointer to that direction research been there?
No, but the thing is that some of the sites were declared as protected sites by the Archaeological Survey of India, say about 100 years back, and some of the mounds in the periphery, like Hanuman Gadi or Mani Parvat or Sugriv Tila. So some of the mounds in the periphery of the Ramkot area, they were excavated by different teams of archaeologists. But the most important thing, so far as the tradition says that it's so many yojanas in length and width, there I may like to tell that geologically speaking, it's T2 terrace. And T2 terrace is one of the highest terraces, natural terraces, over which the settlements took place, and the height of the settlements increased from time to time. Uh, so this several yojanas area that represents the T2 terrace, and probably it was not just the city of Ayodhya, but it was like still we say Chaurasi Kos Yatra, a pilgrimage which takes place by the pilgrims, and going to 84 course, that means 160 uh, kilometers or so. So it seems most probable that the geological terrace, the entire geological terrace, must be representing that tradition, which also says that Ayodhya had its spread in so many yojanas. And one can easily believe that if uh, there are stories in all the religions, all the earlier traditions of huge deluge. And if you believe the story of deluge, it is there in the Sanskrit literature also, which you know very well since you have been doing research. So that deluge had taken place, and but it was Ayodhya which remained untouched by the waters. So it was only because it was a high terrain. So tradition also supports the geological formation of the area.
No, and it's very striking. You said the high terrain, and you mentioned that only you can mention because you've done it. So the description is that the city had moats built around the entire city, and so that the word Ayodhya comes from, which is unconquerable. Not only Dashrath was a very strong ruler, but it was unconquerable geographically, militarily. It was not possible. That's how the word came Ayodhya. And also Nandigram, the distance of Ayodhya city and Nandigram is still the same today also. Teen kos. And even today it's three kos where Bhagwan Ram came from Kishkinda to Prayag where the plane landed first. And then from Prayag he came to Nandigram. And that's where Bharat went out of the city and met him to receive him back to Ayodhya. So that all distances match.
Yes.
And so was any work done on Nandigram side or no?
No, at Nandigram, some trenches were laid when the Ramayana project was underway. But it was only northern black polished ware and its associated pottery that was found, not much settlement was noticed there. So at that time they abandoned it. But since the northern black polished ware and such associated pottery was found, in fact, in those times also they had placed the earliest dates of northern black polished ware to around 700, 800 BC, which after the excavations of Ayodhya, it has gone back to middle of the second millennium BC. And when I said, I wrote it in the my findings in the report on Ayodhya, many of the people were not ready to believe it. But later uh, on this particular aspect, some 8 or 9 excavations in the country were undertaken by some of the universities, some of the state departments of archaeology, and also by Archaeological Survey of India. When the dates of northern black polished ware and its associated pottery was found to be no less than 1300 BC or so. And it's not only in India, but also in Nepal. There is a site just about 20 kilometers inside Nepalese border in the Lumbini Anchal, which was excavated by Italian archaeologists. Uh, Professor Berardi excavated that site. It's called Gotihua. And at Gotihua also similar dates were found. So now we don't believe in those earlier dates of the sites and particularly of the NBPW, which is Northern Black Polished Ware. It's not 700 or 800 BC when it starts, but it starts somewhere in the middle of the second millennium BC, some 1500, 1400 BC at least.
So one of the things is like the when you go to Rome, and many other sites which are in Italy and all, there are seven cities under the main city level of Rome. Under the Rome, there are seven cities, and started from Greeks and then down to what it is today. And the most of the European archaeological societies, they're all trying to find their heritage, document it, and make it into a site. And I really like the work of KK Mohammed ji and yours. You make nice gardens around the whole place. So you excavate a site and you make it, and it becomes a very signature area for people who can come and learn history. And your work is very important because the identity makes people confident of their own heritage, and then they can build on it. That it's not a new civilization, But in the case of, for example, Ayodhya, and also to some extent Indraprasth, Hastinapur, all these different sites are there which are very much core connected to the billions of Hindus, and almost 1.2 billion Hindus, which have strong faith in that. So what effort is being done to connect these ASI excavations and the dating to the actual documentation of those histories in those times?
The initial requirement is for introducing the new findings to the curriculum of the universities and colleges, right from 10th onwards, when history, culture, archaeology, such things are taught to the students. They should be given the new archaeological approach and more details. So the NCERT and such other institutions, they are trying to revise the curriculum for different levels of uh, teaching and learning. So maybe after some time, the new because when we were studying, we were studying the same thing which was found by the European archaeologists in Indian context, and with certain bias also sometimes, uh, and always speaking about things being brought from West to India, and the attacks in which the Aryan invasion theory was also propounded, where you know very well that there's no race as such Aryan, but the Aryan was just a word which was to express some good person,
Good person,
and
gentleman,
yeah,
educated
gentleman,
person.
yeah, and it was not a race. So at the most we can say the period of the Vedic times. It's not Aryan.
Correct.
So, but it was all purposely. I can now say that probably purposely people had started doing such things. But in fact, we have to revise now all these theories, and what is actually found, because in uh, Ayodhya case also, I don't say that it's Ram temple. I say only it's a temple,
That's correct.
because we have to believe only on the uh, evidence, and evidence is of temple. Evidence is not of a Ram temple. It must have been a Ram temple, but we say only a temple. So similarly, whatever is true, we have to depict that, and without any bias.
Correct.
So that is the idea.
No, that's a great point. And also you mentioned correctly about Arya, because very clearly definition is mentioned, and I'm not trying to denigrate. The land between Himachal and Vindhyachal was called Aryavrat, and
Yes,
huge land.
Aryavat.
It
Yes.
stretches right from eastern Afghanistan to Bengal. The entire land is huge land.
Yeah.
Huge land is called Aryavrat, a land of civilized people, and
Mm.
purpose purely because of Ganga and Yamuna, the culture of Ganga, around Ganga, and a lot of intelligent people were there, sages were there. Now, my one last question to you I'm going to call you again and again, request you to come again on different. All you gave me all the topics, so I don't have to now worry. So one thing is, for example, the tradition. Everywhere tradition, you also said correctly, the NCRT books and these books are there. The tradition dictates research. there is a need to justify the tradition. Otherwise, the faith cannot be built up. Some people are special, they have faith because of their tradition, but some other people are going to believe in their tradition more if there is what you are doing, giving the evidence of that. And most of the dating methodologies that you are telling me can go up to 11,000 years, 12,000 years past, if you
easily.
easily. But
Yeah,
but the traditions say something else. Like for example, Kashi was established by Shivji, Anandavan, and
Anand. Yes,
Anand Khan,
yes,
and it
yeah,
is and see, Americans or Western people. I'm talking about people of faith who believe in Hinduism, or they get their faith from Kashi, Ayodhya, Varanasi, and many Americans there. American Hindus is a big number, growing number in USA. Now they for them the biggest attraction in India is not the call centers of India or the IT industry of India. Their biggest attraction is to go on in the Kumbh Mela, or they want to go to Kumbh Mela all over India, or they go to Narmada, Kaveri, or the places which are they read in their scriptures. So what attempt is being done to they have to not just think about Indians, but think about other people who have faith in these. And they're big growing number. It's South Americans. We have so many people who are enchanted by Shiva story, or Krishna story, or Ram story. And like a very famous Antonia Filmer, she's a big Ram Bhakt. She wrote on my books also. She wrote for. So what attempt is being done, keeping in view not just NCRT books, but the global faith of Hindus, whose faith is not coming from Indian textbooks. Their faith is coming from Vyasa's writing, or Valmiki's writings, or their faith is coming from Shushruta, maybe. It's a medicinal science they've written. So Patanjali Yoga Sutra. But all these traditions have always spoken something much larger, much older, much grander. And so what attempt is being done to cater to that global community, not just Indian community?
I don't think there is any such attempt being made by the government or by the other institutions, but uh, people are working in compartmentalized formations. So uh, everyone has got his own uh, explanation to the things. So far as there are, I believe there are certain symbolic symbolism also involved. Like when you mentioned Shiva associated with Kashi, he was the founder of Kashi also. So it is also said that Kashi is situated on the Trishul of trident of Shiva. And if you just forget about the city, the buildings, lanes, by lanes, etc., then you clearly find that there are three huge mounds. One is Vishweshwar Khand, the other one is Adi Keshav Khand, and the Kedar Khand. So these are the three mounts. So one can very easily uh, conceptualize that it's the trident of the Shiva. So probably such symbolism also got associated with this city of light, or the city which had illuminated people in different times. Buddha, Kabir, all came to Varanasi, Shankaracharya. So they got enlightenment and they studied. They moved around Kashi. So gradually, some symbolism were also added to the actual happenings.
Yes, and you just mentioned three khand. So my natural question is Kashi Vishwanath, on which khand is this?
In
Would
the central one,
in the central
Visheshar Khand.
Vishesh khand?
Yeah, yeah.
No,
And the government is doing a very good job at present,
very
because
good job.
there is a corridor which is being opened now from Ganges. Straightway one can come to the temple, not going in the lanes and by lanes.
No,
Straightway, yeah,
I
Vishwanath
visited.
corridor,
Correct.
yeah.
I went
So
there and I,
so
yeah.
so much of properties which people had, the government had acquired them, removed the houses which were constructed, say, 50 years, 100 years before, and found that in all the houses there were temples.
Correct.
So, of course, most of them are medieval temples, some maybe earlier ones also. But now, if you imagine, or since you have seen it, you will find only temples in a beautiful landscape if you start coming from Ganges to Vishwanath temple. So, a wonderful view
Beautiful view
one can get. Yes,
and well lit also, very well lit in the night.
yes,
And
yeah,
there I saw Chandragupta Maurya's Shivling. There's one temple there. They claim to be Chandragupta Maurya installed it. But yeah, this is the kind of thing needs to be done, like the which is built on tradition and then given faith. I mean, most of the I can say for clearly that the attraction they have for most of the Western audience is an alternative philosophy, not their main philosophy. But these kind of things they increase tourism based on philosophy. So
yeah,
far we are trying, we are trying to do a tourism means people come in buses and see, but they don't spend a lot of money because the money is used by the travel operators. But when you have travelers coming on excavations, that's where Israel gets the money. Israel is such a small country, and people from America and everywhere else, they go there to excavate to find their roots, whether Judaism or Christianity or is it any other faith they have. But they try to they go there to find their roots. Same thing, people who are have faith in some Hindu culture, they want to come to India to rediscover their faith or reconnect with the faith. And that is a and they spend more money because they're connected to that. So when they come there, even from far, they'll see Hanuman Gadi. They're just connected. It's a symbol for them. Or they see Dashrath Palace in Ayodhya. It's a symbol for them, and the huge gates and other things. So coming back to Ayodhya, will there be any plan to make, like you correctly mentioned, that it's a plateau, which is
yeah.
a plateau. The entire Ayodhya is a plateau, two or three plateaus. Will there be a plan from ASI, or can you influence something which they can work on this faith and evidence connection? Maybe they can, some
You
questions
know,
remain unanswered. It's okay.
yeah. You know that one thing is very clear, that the entire Ayodhya, present day city, it's full of temples as well as houses. So you can't remove people from the
Exactly.
area and then excavate. So that is an issue which is not with many of the sites, archaeological sites, which we find very free from any construction or any such thing. But there it may be difficult. So I don't think only those mounds which have been protected, or even those mounds which are not protected, they can be exploited for excavations. And even if that work is undertaken, that will give wonderful information for future generation, for who may like to know more about the foundation of the city, its flourishing period. Because in the Gupta period also we find that Raghuvansh was written by Kalidas, which mentions all the grandeur of Ayodhya. So that is how one can think of future course of researches, but not in full, unless you remove people and acquire the land and then do the work.
There are many alternative ways to do it. Like, for example, Rome has done it. They have preserved the old Rome, 3 levels, 7 layers of Rome they have preserved, and they have built the modern city around those. And citizens have contributed because the government gave them places to so that they can livelihood can continue, and actually they make more money than by historical Rome than by modern Rome. Modern Rome, nobody goes to Rome for business; they go to Rome for
Yes,
tourism or travel, or nobody goes to Israel for business because there is so much insecurity there. But people go to Israel for finding their roots. And the same thing Indian sites can do, and India has plenty of them, and right up to present day Pakistan, Afghanistan, and Bangladesh also, and Burma to a large extent. But thank you so much, Dr. Biamani. I know it's late for you, and also you're on a tour. So
yes. To my home only.
to my home, to your home. And then so all of us are travelers, so we
Yes.
so but you
From
gave
one home to another.
so you gave me a lot of topics, and I'm going to snatch some time later on in some other show.
Yes, yes. I would love to discuss these things with you.
And we would at Sattology we would like to work with the Indian government to preserve, and also work with the American government to help Indian government preserve the heritage. We'll do both the things.
Yeah. Yeah.
So thank you and namaskar, and
Namaskar. Welcome.
namaskar. Thank you.